Hello, welcome back to Glazing with Kara and AMACO, Albany Slip Brown and Seaweed, Part 2. So I'm going to run this test of the glaze from Part 1. And of course I want to write on it. So I'm using an underglaze applicator on a piece of bisqueware. And this is V370 velour black, which is what I use to label everything in slip applicator. Sorry for the crunchy noise with that. So I always want to make sure that I have things labeled. I'm going to make a little extra dot of this. So my Albany slip, I got a third coat on. It's still a little moist. So in the meantime, I'm going to talk about brushes. So my favorites, of course, are the AMACO Fitch fan brushes for applying the glaze, just for the main coats. These are on our website. And this is a size 6, and what I used to apply the glaze on this piece today was one of these. It's a size 4. This one you can tell has been used a bit because the bristles do get a little discolored over time, but they come out clean, and as long as I'm washing them well, I know that it's not a problem. And then for applying the seaweed today, I'm going to use just a round brush, and this is a brush that's been discontinued. Or I'm going to use this angled brush. I like both of those. So I can apply it with those, or I can use something like this, which, as I said, pretty sure that's seaweed, but I always want to test to be sure. So we had some questions. Lisa Franzman asked if Albany slip can be made in different colors, but Albany slip is the color of the clay. It's a very, very iron-rich clay, and so the color is always going to come out kind of brown. You can get our Chino glazes, our Chino gloss glazes have a similar effect to Albany slip brown, where they break dark, and where they're thick, they have the color of the glaze. Where they break thin, they're just a very, very dark brown. And I'm going to be talking about Chinos in another live segment coming up. So I'll talk about that more then, but the Chino series glazes break dark brown and then have a lighter color where they're thicker. So there are some glazes that we have that have a similar effect, but in different colors. Marianne Semrenek asked, when you layer glazes, are they still food safe? And the answer is maybe. It's difficult to answer that because we don't test the glazes when they're layered. We only have them tested for food safety as a single glaze when they're applied and fired as we define on the label. So if you're doing something different with the glaze, if you're using it for an off-label purpose, we can't test for that because the permutations, there's just too many possible variations that we can't test all of those variations. So the answer is, if you have a layering combo that you really want to use on a food surface, you should have that combination tested at a lab yourself, and that will give you the answers that you are looking for. So I have my seaweed, and it is kind of like thickening up on the edges, but I'm just going to use some of the seaweed off the side. Now, to get the effect that I like, that peacock feather effect, going back to Marianne's question about food safety, so the answer is probably, but we cannot assure you that it is. So you need to do your own testing if you're going to be doing dinnerware. And to be honest, all dinnerware manufacturers should be testing their glazes independently. So to do the peacock feather effect, I just apply the seaweed as polka dots. And I just go around. I mean, this seems so simple. So sometimes layering can be done as polka dots, it can be done as stripes, it can be done in different ways. You can paint on and sponge off. There's so many different ways to do it. Let me see, my seaweed is trying to run away here. So seaweed is a very, very dark green glaze, and it can really overwhelm a lot of colors. So I tend to use it just sparingly, just in some areas. But I really love using it with a variety of colors. It looks great when layered over obsidian. As you can see from the piece I showed earlier, and I'll show again in a little while, it looks great with Albany Slip Brown. It's also really, really nice with either oatmeal or iron yellow. It is a really interesting glaze, but I think that it's best when used in small amounts. And if you're using it as a base glaze, it really works best at cone 5. You can fire it to cone 6, but sometimes it will occasionally blister at cone 6, and so if you're worried about it blistering, you may want to stick to cone 5 or keep it in a cooler part of your kiln, or only use it on top of another glaze. So there's my polka dots. And when this is fired, it will look like this. So I am going to, once that seaweed dries, I'm going to put 2 more coats of dots on the dots that are already there, so they're nice and thick. I can leave them smaller and they won't spread out as much. They'll just be tinier and not quite as strong, but I really like how they get almost an opalescent kind of luster on them. And you can see where it's a little thicker, it's kind of more green, but it has such a nice luster over the creamy background of the Albany Slip Brown. So that's what this will look like when it's done. And that is it for today. So next week, I think we're going to be switching to a Tuesday, just a scheduling thing. And we will be back with more glazing. So if you have any questions or comments or things that you would like to see us do, please drop it in the comments, and I will be talking to you guys next week. Thanks so much for joining me.